All right. Are you guys ready for a PVT? Oh, that's good. Your first player from Korea. You've met him before. He's amazing. He's everything. Startail Bomber. And his opponent in his first game on stage for us in this tournament, Complexity Minigun. Come on, a warm welcome. It's his first time. Are you guys ready? Good luck, have fun. And the casters will take it from here.
Thank you, Jared. I'm pretty excited at the chance to see Minigun going up against Bomber. Bomber, though very near indestructible, is not completely indestructible. As we saw him fall to Moonglade, and Minigun kind of has a weird style that we'll be throwing at Bomber on day 9.
I mean, and even in the qualification process through the open bracket here for Bomber, he didn't really look as furious and indestructible. He didn't look as destructible. He didn't look as furiously, powerful as he has done in the past. Every single series of his during the open bracket was a 2-1. So there was never a moment where he was dominating someone absolutely, completely, and there was never really a moment where he was being, completely outclassed.
Yeah, and weirdly though, as he steps into the as we step into the group stages for today, I was really shocked at the series between Bomber and Moonglade. Not just at the result, but in watching the games themselves, where Moonglade looked like he just had an answer every step of the way. Minigun, though he's down 0-3 right now, had the insane run to be able to qualify for this event, taking out Major, who's been training in Korea, Illusion, who's been training on the Korean server. Actually, all these players training on the Korean server. Major, Illusion, Vive, Golden State, and Idra, all knocked out by Minigun.
Yeah, and this is something that I was saying at the very, very beginning of the tournament. There was 4 qualifiers from that NA server. There was Violet, Demuslim, Minigun, and somebody else. But all the other 3 players only had to actually win 2 series because they were invited to stage 3 of the qualification process. Minigun came through all the way from stage 1 and destroyed everyone on the way. Yeah. And people didn't necessarily expect that from Minigun. Minigun just kind of bust things out and got the job done, man.
Yeah, and I mean, Bomber, likewise, came here as one of the open bracket players.
Yeah.
Wrecked his way through the entire open bracket to be able to be here today, is currently in one of the top 3 positions, has an interesting new form style of Terran versus Protoss. All the Startail players are doing some really cool stuff in that matchup. Bomber doing this insanely fast 4th and 5th barracks to continue to destroy his opponents in the mid game, not going for this late game play that was kind of a thing of the past now.
Yeah, and I mean, just coming back to on the Bomber, during the open bracket, he went 2-1 against Bly, 2-1 against Delphi, and 2-1 against Real. These 3 players, by no means kind of, bottom of the line kind of pros. These guys are very, very powerful, especially Real, who made it so far during the open bracket and was able to take amazing series off the likes of Yonghua. So Startail Bomber here, a very, very strong force, and Minigun's going to have his work cut out for him.
Go ahead and introduce our players up in the top right. Though he's down 0-3, still has 2 more matches to go for a chance to get into the top 3 position. It's going to be Complexity's Minigun. Down in the bottom left, a Red Bull sponsored athlete and a GSL regular. It is Startail's Bomber.
Now, Minigun, he also, I mean, I just don't, it's going to be difficult for Minigun here. He's not been doing so hot in this group stage thus far. I don't know if it's nerves, because he only has really participated in a good few, open brackets in MLG, for example. That's something, that's where we see Minigun's normal territory. This is a bit of a bigger stage than that open bracket. There may be some kind of nerves, some kind of tension there, but Minigun, very, very nice chap, and I've got to say, going up against Bomber, there is the potential for him to be able to do something here. PVT, not necessarily the strongest of his matches matchups, he's got about a 44% win ratio there. It's really his PVZ that shines a little more. And from there, we'll have to see where he goes for.
Yeah, I think Minigun's PVT certainly looks the shabbiest of all. I mean, his PVZ just looks amazing. He's able to just destroy so many top Zerg players. But in this matchup, Bomber also claims that it is his current best matchup. He loves the TVP mix. And a lot of Bomber's success, again, comes from emphasizing aggression in the mid game. He does his best to try to just blast down his opponents with the Medivacs, with the Marine Marauder Viking in the middle, and actually has some of the latest ghosts I've seen. The only player who I think has later ghosts is Startail Hack, his teammate.
Yeah, and I mean, on the subject of that Startail house, they have phenomenal Protoss players to practice with, such as Startail Parting, who happens to be one of my favorite players in the entire world. I adore the way in which we see Parting play. But Bomber, he has those practice partners to be able to really, really ramp up his ability in this matchup. And Minigun's got to be very, very careful of that kind of thing.
Yeah, Minigun, I think, though he has QXC on his team to rely on and to play with, certainly not at the caliber of Bomber, because there's really not many Terrans in the entire world who are on the caliber of Bomber. And this really is, this opening that we're going to be seeing out of Bomber looks very familiar to the one he debuted at the Red Bull Battlegrounds tournament, where he kind of has this tapered timing, where he just gets these barracks one at a time whenever he can afford it. He'll get a single geyser and get the tech lab and slowly add on his tech lab, his engineering bay, his starport, and these sorts of things. But if you look at the timing of it, he's actually getting things full minutes and a half earlier, especially at the 8:30 mark. You should see 2 barracks fall down for Bomber.
Yep, and he's just going to be able to bolster his defenses here. Has that one bunker at the front to be able to deal with anything that would come along. You know, there's always nice to have that one bunker just in case that little poke comes, or even just in case that like 3-gate aggression does end up showing its head as well. It's fallen off a little bit of style here, but Bomber for now, I mean, even if that 3-gate aggression did come, one bunker sometimes just isn't enough. But having that one there to be able to prepare yourself from there on is really, really quite a sturdy position.
Bomber's looking just kind of in your normal Protoss or normal Terran position. Meanwhile, Minigun has added on 1 gateway. It looks like he's going to be going 2 gateways right off the bat. This is a very common setup with an early expand, just having 3 gateways total in some composition.
Yeah.
We see that Minigun actually charged in with a single probe to try to get a good count as to what was up. Not going to fall for that trap and lose that initial stalker, but there we see there's also an engineering bay going down for Bomber somewhere on the map. Ah, I found it.
Yeah.
Stim +1, no doubt to follow that up shortly.
Bomber is the kind of Terran that always goes 1 engineering bay, then engineering bay armory once his +1 is finished up or almost finished up, to be able to get those extra upgrades going. You never really see him throw down double engineering bays at any given point in time in this matchup, because sometimes that can leave you in a bit of a precarious situation, going up against someone who's committed fully to that army and not the upgrades in the earlier stages.
Now this is interesting. An instant 3rd Nexus from Minigun, very common on this map.
Yeah.
Surprised to see him go 3rd Nexus, but then also have these 2 gateways. Generally, you'll see players even skip those, as Parting would so do. Parting and Squirtle, both popular examples of that. With this early Twilight Council, this looks kind of Dark Templar-y, this timing. It's more of a defensive Dark Templar play if he does get it. Alternatively, he could also just be going for the very fast charge to be able to just do a straight bolstered attack.
Yeah, and I do love if he was to go for charge, for example. I do love the incorporation of, say, +1 armor, for example. But no,
Blink. Oh, a cool play. God, I'm so excited to see Blink play out of Minigun. This is just a really, really fun mix. Getting the 3 assimilators, not really going to be getting too many more. He needs to add on a bunch of gateways. Might even go up to 8. 6 is a little more common to see, but no, he is actually going to be adding on more. Really good way to deal with this aggression that we're going to be seeing out of Bomber.
Oh, wow, yeah, actually, this is going to be very, very interesting. He's probably, I mean, normally what we will see in TVP is the Blink being used in an aggressive fashion in order to be able to, say, blink forwards and try and snipe out Vikings, so that your eventual Colossus are able to, withstand a little bit more and stick around for a little bit longer. Now, I think, are we going to see Minigun here use this Blink play in an offensive way to the point where he could either, use, he's got a robo facility on the way, he could use it to blink in the back, or he could use it at the front and then use that Blink defensively from that point onwards?
I think he's trying to make sure he has enough to deal with some sort of early medevac play defensively first and then snap back once he has the observers to really be aggro. But what I love about what Bomber's doing is here are these 2 barracks that were built at a little after 8:30, so that way he can really ramp up the aggression a lot more than your average player would be able to. It's a pretty cool timing that was caused by Bomber delaying one of his geysers for quite some time in the early game. Minigun does see that there's no 3rd expansion down. In fact, there's no 3rd started. This is kind of like the StarTale common theme. They just don't like early 3rd command centers.
Yeah, and I mean, oh wow, we already have charge on the way for Minigun here. That's a bit of a quicker charge than I was expecting off the back of that blink. So Minigun really just saying, I'm not really committing to my armor and weapons, which to me, this seems kind of more of a very, very mid-game-esque style. He's not committing to those upgrades, and thus he's going to fall behind Bomber eventually. But if he kills him before that with the efficiency of his Blink Stalkers and Charge Lots, able to either close the gap or make the gap with those upgrades, do you feel that that's what we're going to be seeing here from Minigun, or is that something that's a little precarious? Yeah,
I think right now Minigun's just basically saying, how do I deal with 10-minute attacks? Once I have an answer to that, then I'm going to step deeply into late game. I'm going to be chrono boosting probes like crazy. He's stopped now at 57. He's adding on more pylons, just trying to make sure his gateways can be saturated in production, but it looks like Minigun doesn't actually see this medevac on the right side.
We have that double forge on the way now here for Minigun in his main. Meanwhile, though, Bomber looking to have a little bit of a look around. I think he parked himself right under that observer, but for now, Minigun knows exactly where his opponent is and will be able to take precautions against that.
It looks like as Minigun steps into this side, Minigun also in an awkward position, about to lose his natural expansion, has to make a big decision of how he wants to arrange his forces.
Meanwhile, he did blink forwards aggressively towards that force in the middle to snipe off one of the medevacs. A bit of a scary possibility there, as the entire Bioforce could have turned around and stimmed up, killing off a lot of those Stalkers. But again, there's always that looming threat of charge after they do get that speed upgrade.
Well, charge is now done. Looks like, Bomber going again for the re-drop. And there's the blink forward. The medevac falls immediately. The force gets cleaned up. Very nice little pickup, but here comes the charge. Bomber runs headlong into a huge troop of speed zealots, but it looks like there's literally so many Marine Marauders that I think Bomber might barely be able to break in.
That +1 weapons and the abundance here of the Marine count really, really paying dividends for Bomber. Not only that, but with the Zealots actually closing the gap and pushing them up against it, you don't really negate too much of the DPS from the Bio anyway, because all the Marines are firing in the back at the Zealots. So for now, he's doing a lot of damage. Is he going to bring down
fire
the Nexus?
on the Nexus? It looks like he's been trying to target fire. There's a couple of rounds of warp in from Minigun, but there's good game.
GG.
Bomber. So good in this matchup.
He really is. He knows exactly where to hit at any given situation. Like, he retreated with that drop to begin with. Minigun positions his Stalkers. He finds the one hole in that natural just to be able to drop once again, draw his opponent's attention away from that location for just a little bit, gets a few too many units up that ramp at the 3rd, and able to push in for the win.
Just a sickening aggression that we always see out of a Bomber in the mid-game. Even if that drop didn't really do any damage, I mean, it got killed off, swatted aside, and then what happened? Bomber literally went straight up the ramp towards the 3rd base.
Yeah.
The force fields were exactly perfect to lock in just the right amount of units, and he still won easily.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the macro style that Bomber and all the StarTale players have been doing, where they just get that really early 4th and 5th barracks, and a lot of Protosses aren't really used to it. They're used to like the cute harass, where it's like, I dropped over here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's enough. Now I'm going to start my 2-2 upgrades, and it's kind of this goofy way that Terrans have been playing, where they're not really embracing how strong they can be in the mid-game. But really, Bomber is only a mid-game player at this point in time, because he just keeps winning there.
Yeah. He really does. He really, really does. And again, you know, for Minigun, in this matchup, I don't know if it's just me, but I swear by early armor upgrades as a Protoss going into this matchup. It might not be everyone's cup of tea. It might not be the be-all and end-all of PvT, but getting that against the Bio, and if your opponent is going to be taking that +1 as early as what Bomber do there, you need to be able to negate those small packets of damage very, very fast there. Yeah, as much as possible.
I mean, when we see so much happen out of StarTale Squirtle, who, again, on the same team as Bomber and Hack, he goes for the really early armor and blink but then focuses a little more on Immortals as the big damage-dealing component of that force. Because honestly, as high DPS as Marines are, Immortals just have so much health. I mean, even Zealots that do damage ridiculously quickly in this game. The fact is, you can kill off 1 or 2 or 3 of them quite quickly, but it's hard to kill an Immortal, especially if the force fields are good. And I think that's going to be the big key, like you say, that armor upgrade, but combined with some sort of really beastly unit. I just don't think that the gateway-only defense is enough to handle a player like Bomber.
Yeah, I've got to fully agree. It can be very, very tricky against someone as shenaniganry and tricky as Bomber himself. So, without further ado, we should be loading up onto ESV Ohana in just a little bit here between these two guys. And, you know, Minigun has got it all to play for. I'm pretty sure he's 3-0 down in his group right now.
Yeah, I mean, Minigun's been having a really tough tournament. It's just been up against good player after good player after good player. And now he's up against probably the best player in his group.
Yeah. And Bomber looking poised for a very, very strong finish here. He's constantly exuding this sense of confidence. And Bomber, unlike most Koreans, he is able to, if he thinks he's in a really good position, he will show to his opponent that he's in that good position by dropping the mules, dropping off scan flower here and there. And that really does give quite a lovely little bit of personality to Bomber.
Up in the top left corner, currently down 0-1. Hoping for a miracle or an amazing play in game number 2. It's Complexity's Minigun.
And spawning down in the bottom left-hand corner, currently 1 game up in this series, representing StarTale. Give it up for Bomber.
I just like the fact that the way Bomber has dealt with all the problems that, you know, Terrans were complaining for so long that it's too difficult to beat the ultra late game Protoss, all the upgrades and the Colossus and the Templar. And suddenly, Bomber was one of the first ones to do it. Just really said, well, wait a minute, what if I just attack him a lot in the mid game? Oh, wait, Protosses are weak in the mid game. Oh, and then all of a sudden, when the Protoss is at 3-3 and that max Colossus army and has Templar, it's a 5-base Terran versus a 3-base Protoss. That is what you gain by being aggressive in the mid game, ignoring all the times where you get nice wins like we saw in this first match. All the other times you just get upgrade advantages, you get extra expansion advantages because your mid game aggression is just ripping time right out of the lungs of the Protoss.
Yeah, and I mean, from game number 1 there, we saw Minigun being able to take a very, very quick third. Now, that opens up the window for Bomber to start that drop aggression a little bit earlier than it would normally be. Now, most Terrans don't like dropping Protoss on 2-base because they're always able to cover the angles at any given point in time. Minigun was kind of spreading himself a little bit thinly there by taking that third and allowing that aggression to occur there. So he was kind of out of place and out of time, really. So for now, we'll be scouting out here to be able to have a little bit of a look around, see what's going on. Interestingly enough, where is Minigun going with this probe? Well, checking for some hidden barracks, potentially?
I mean, there is a really fun play that you can do where you build a robotics facility right here with a warp prism and then run up to the high ground and just do a 4-zealot drop and then a 4-zealot warp in. But right now, Minigun making this first zealot a little bit of an unnecessary move if he can identify that his opponent is going for an early expand, which interestingly, Minigun has not identified this, but against Bomber, I think it's one of those things that you can literally just expect without scouting.
Yeah, as for now, Bomber having a little bit of a look around, seeing just a pretty standard build here from Minigun. So he does Chrono Boost out that Stalker. Always nice to have that Zealot and Stalker out, and it's always very, very important as well to importantly, get that Zealot out to be able to make sure your opponent doesn't throw that Engineering Bay down at your natural if you want to go for a 1 gateway expand. That is looking very, very predictably common here from Minigun.
And of course, Bomber wants to kill off that Destructible Depot as quickly as he can. There's the sort of tapered timing on these barracks, the single refinery. I mean, Bomber has been doing this exact build in every tournament I've seen him in the last few months. Such a reliable way to play. And now Minigun waltzes right on up. He's maybe going to get the SCV. Only takes a little bit of main health damage. Put the 1 gate expand up for Minigun. An early assimilator like this help him get that sentry count up nice and high, but I'm hoping that Minigun either goes for a fast robo, maybe do some sort of big Colossus push, or maybe just goes for the double upgrades, the way you were talking about earlier. Something that is not gateway focused.
Yeah, something that gateway focus really did not lend itself too well to what we were seeing out of Bomber there. And for now, I mean, he's throwing down those extra 2 gateways. Nexus is on the way as well. But, I mean, that little poke that Minigun went for earlier, he really saw what he wanted to see. The fact that there was an expansion down. So, I mean, he's going to be considering probably the same build from Bomber at this point.
Bomber, despite the fact of all the predictability, it's the timing that makes Bomber's build so good. Minigun now throwing down the robotics facility. This is looking a little bit more standard. Would have loved to see just one forge thrown down right now. Just a single freaking forge. So that way he can begin going for sentries, immortals, these types of units.
Yeah.
Build up the big power beefy things. And again, de-emphasize things like stalkers and zealots. Right now with 1 sentry and 1 zealot up, this is actually kind of an interesting position for Minigun. He's getting very early gas geysers in his expansion. And with just 2 sentries, he's going to have plenty of gas to do something big in mid-game.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see a very, very quick Robo-Bay here from Minigun. It's a play that can catch Terrans off guard, and Bomber... but then again, Bomber showed that his start spot wasn't too late in that first game, so it wouldn't have a vast amount of success, because there we go. The factory is now on the way. He's getting that observer on the way as well here to be able to scout exactly what's going on. And from here, I mean, it's really... Bomber can really do anything on this bio play.
Yeah, the cool key that Bomber does is it's around 8:30. He has enough minerals to do the 2 barracks that, again, I very much so anticipate that he'll do. Or he can even get a command center if he's reading his opponent as a little bit too passive, which is totally what Minigun's doing right now. Double forge upgrade for Minigun. Probably will end up seeing a robotics bay in a moment here. Minigun, excellent micro there on that 1 stalker. That's really easy to lose, but as these observers float in, this is the really terrible part about going up against Bomber. Most of the time you're looking for like 3 barracks play, or you're looking for an expansion, or maybe some early engineering bays, but when you hop into Bomber's base, you're just going, oh my god, he's getting everything so fast, right? There's nothing useful for you to see in the main base. It's this sickeningly fast timing, but we haven't seen those extra barracks yet. There they are.
Awesome stuff. And what Minigun just saw there with his observer in his opponent's base wasn't a whole lot in terms of tech, but he sees that his opponent is taking the precautions to already shut down potential plays later on. Putting these supply depots around the extremities of his base here means that he can just spot drops that little bit quicker from warp prism play, or even, you know, some kind of air play that would come along, which would be very unpredictable in this matchup at this point. But, you know, anything or everything could come out.
Observers continuing to be in production for Minigun. This is kind of a cool answer. In that unit tab, we actually see 3 observers out for Minigun right now. He's leaving 1 right at the front. This is such a cool position. This will help him see if there's any medevacs going to reinforce the army. He can even see if there's Vikings in production. Another observer to be able to check if there's a drop coming in at the back. And the final, most important observer poking outside the front while still having a little bit of room to retreat to high ground if need be.
Yeah, I think Minigun here, then the transition from game 1 to game 2 is playing... Well, initially he's playing to the map to a certain degree. Cloud Kingdom is one of those maps that you can secure your third really, really quickly because of the way in which, you know, the 2 ramps operate if you're able to get the right composition out at that point in time. Now, he hasn't taken his third just yet here, just relying on this tech on the 2 bases, just wanting to stabilize. And from there, already has that +2 armor on the way, which we were talking about in the break between the game 1 and game 2. Really, really going to lend itself very nicely against this very similar push to what we saw from Bomber in game number 1.
Minigun splitting things up in the typical fashion. Stalkers at the back, everything else at the front. And now it looks like Bomber, trying to go for a split. And just as Bomber has that spread of all those supply depots in the main, we see the pylon spread at the front is looking very good. And Bomber's going to be doing the same trick that we saw in the last game. Does Bomber see the observer there?
Well, he was Bomber was able to spot that Colossus, that's for sure. And for now, you can guarantee he's going to start that Viking production straight away, and I guess that's shut down. So nice little move there by Minigun.
I almost wish that Minigun had actually just held back.
Yeah.
That he had just invited it up. And now suddenly Minigun has gotten to get to the mid-game where we have Blink 2-2 coming up. Of course, Minigun wants to have a third base up, as it's pretty difficult to just keep going on 2 base when you're just spending all this gas. But weirdly, Minigun can afford to have a delayed third base, because soon enough, Minigun won't need to spend gas anymore. All his upgrades are done. All his buildings will be done. He'll just have a ton of money to be able to go macro crazy. After this 3-3 gets started, you can see as much as 6 more gateways added on for Protoss.
Yep, and they can start working in some very, very interesting unit compositions there, going up to those High Templars, maybe even adding on Dark Shrine later on in order to be able to just try and take control of the middle of the map. Really slows Terran down from actually pushing out across the map as well, forcing all those scans. A little bit of wasted opportunity cost there in itself. But for now, Minigun with that third on the way here. But Bomber's push out was nice to begin with. He just, secured the third behind that. Sorry, couldn't do any damage. Well, I'll just go home and have my lovely, lovely third up.
Minigun continuing to get some Stalkers, not a ton. He has 7 out right now. Most are here. Does not have all the defense that he needs at the back of his base, but with this one Observer and the extended gateway count, he can easily do a warp in at the back if he needs to. It looks like Blink is just now wrapping up. No doubt charge, level 3 upgrades to come. Minigun's trying to see if there's a possible opportunity to do some sort of pressure. There's Bomber with a clairvoyant scan, but a little bit too early.
Well, he actually picked off an Observer with the 3 Vikings, which is a very, very nice little pick off there by Bomber. Being able to spot that and chase that down, very useful. There's 1 Observer left on the field here for Minigun, so he's going to be able to need that later on as the Ghosts are now in production. And if you don't have an Observer with your army, sometimes that can get very, very dicey indeed.
Yeah, that's actually what Thorzane does, where he goes mass Viking, mass Ghost.
Yeah.
And then scans just to pick off the Observer, and then he cloaks the Ghost, and he can even pick off Colossus with the freaking Ghost. In the meantime, we see that this is what makes the late-game army so strong and yet so flimsy as Terran. 55 Marines, 3 Ghosts, and there's only 60 workers for Bomber. He has almost no ability to follow this up. Again, he's all mid-game. He is just devoting everything to this attack right here, and there's not even enough time to get 3-3 or Storm.
Now Charge is on the way. It's going to be finishing up in just a second. That's going to help Minigun in this defense here, but Bomber right now almost on the verge of being maxed out.
Minigun.
He's going to try and drop some EMPs. He is able to hit 1 or 2 of those sentries right now, though. The Zealots with that charge kicking in there. Needs to micro back as best he can do. The Vikings actually able to rip apart that Colossus count very, very quickly. There's very little gateway force left here for Minigun as Bomber is ripping him apart.
God, Bomber is just so good at getting these killer mid-games. 2-1 upgrades versus the 2-2. Picks off the reinforcing pylon, an attempted warp in, but Bomber turns around, he picks it off again. Bomber is very low on health on these units, and there's the GG. Bomber looks absolutely indestructible in that matchup, Pilaris.
That was a different Bomber to what we saw yesterday. That was a Bomber coming in with a little bit more rest, a bit more confidence after that open bracket, and really, really tearing the Protoss a new hide. That was pretty brutal there. For
tearing it a new hide. What a saying. Is that a Britishism?
I think actually that's an Australianism.
Oh, or
maybe. I'm not quite sure, to be honest.
That's cool. Your isms from everywhere after that matchup. I mean, Minigun, frustrated after that series, but I mean, that's one of the things that actually blows my mind about watching Bomber play. You see that match and you just think, well, what could you have done? I mean, there were so many units in that attack force, and what did we see Minigun do? He went for that really fast 1-1, the really fast 2-2 right on the heels, chrono boosted it like crazy, but Bomber still found a window where Bomber was at 2-1 when his opponent was at 2-2. The 3-3 getting close to done for Minigun, but not seconds away. It's like the most perfect timing window that Bomber could have possibly attacked in.
Yeah, and when you say, what more could I have done, there wasn't really any major aggression there coming from Bomber. He put his opponent on a little bit of a defensive posture after seeing that move out was coming, and there was always the potential of the drop in the back, but he never did any direct damage from there. So Minigun, with the little bit later third than his opponent, Bomber just macroing up from there on, and found himself just that lovely little kind of opening.
So it does put Bomber as 3-1 in the group, Minigun as 0-4. Still one more round to go. Super pumped to know what's going on in the remainder of the event, because right now, again, Elfie, Bomber, Slivko, and Grubby are all 2-1 in the group. I just got word that Slivko is currently up 1-0 against Grubby. Kind of a surprising result, as Grubby is so good in the PvZ matchup, but he's really going to demonstrate that there's a ton of up-and-comers.
Yeah, and I think that Group C, out of looking at all the groups, people would consider like Group C, I would say in inverted commas, the weakest group. But realistically, all of these groups are absolutely insane. You know, the level that we've already seen here today has been fantastic, and I'm sure we're going to be seeing some more epic games on the way in just a bit.
So, when we come back, we're going to be doing the final match of group number C. It's going to be Moonglade going up against Elfie. Don't go anywhere, because this is the first set of group stage matches of the day. I'm Day 9.
I'm Kyle Loris, and let's get onto that break, and we'll be back.